What's up, everybody? I'm Katie.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is For Your Misinformation, a podcast dedicated to empowering women to be more politically engaged so we can act in our own best interests.
Let us break down the problem and tell you what we're doing and what you can do to help solve it. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Morgan.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm pretty good, too. I'm excited about this episode, and I'm just generally excited about this week, too, because everybody remembers my happy thing from last week. Was my niece's adoption, and that's happening at the end of this week. So when this episode comes out, that will have happened, and literally it's all I can think about.
Yes. It's
so
a short 3 days away. Mm-hmm. Are you guys going to do anything to celebrate?
Yeah, we are. We're gonna have a little family get together kind of thing at her house during the actual hearing, which is happening over Zoom. And then afterwards and stuff. And then the next weekend, we're going to have an actual party, but it's going to be at a church, which has a large area, and everybody's supposed to hand sanitizer, masks, all of that. And it's a big space, so we can social distance, but still be together celebrating. And she's going to get so many gifts that have her new name on it.
Nice.
I got her one of those personalized storybooks, and yeah, she's going to be getting a ton of stuff with her name personalized, which is
Once
so exciting.
She can read, she's going to love it.
Yeah.
That's cute. I went to visit a friend today, actually the one whose job that you took over. And I got to see her little girl, and she's having another little girl in a month, which is crazy.
Oh, wow, so soon.
I know, but I got to have some social time with somebody who's not a blood relative, and it was very nice. I forgot how nice it is.
Yeah, you haven't gotten a lot of that.
No. So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about what everybody's talking about.
Yep.
We are talking about the police.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the police. I want to be very clear. Morgan's talking about her experience with one officer who she dated for a while and lived with, and I am talking about one particular ride along with the police that was 4 hours long. So we're not this. These are anecdotes. But I want to go ahead and read some police stats, so that you get a picture, a bigger picture, and then can contextualize what we're talking about with it. But there's a lot, so. All right, so here we go. So police are just one part of a larger system of racial inequality, but they're the ones with the guns, so we have to talk about it. The way I think about it is it's like if the police were toddlers and we gave them a toy that the mom knew they weren't ready for, but dad said it was fine, except instead of dad admitting he was wrong after the toddler murdered somebody, and taking the toy away, the dad was just pretended everything was fine and let the kid keep on murdering. And then the other thing that I always think about with cops is the Golden State Killer was a cop, and that's part of the reason that he didn't get caught for so long, is because he knew all the ins and outs of what not to leave behind.
Yeah, and I feel like that's such a good point, too, with your toddler analogy when we talk about things like qualified immunity and everything, and how there really is this policy, too, where they're just oh, well, this was just their first incident. They'll learn, they get better, da-da-da. And there's just all these excuses made and blatant ignoring. And yeah, it's not good. It's boys will be boys. Oh, cops will be cops.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And
no.
Honestly, we'll probably be talking about stuff like this for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, we'll illustrate some of those concepts for sure. So here are some of the statistics that I've been learning about the past couple weeks that really jumped out at me. But about every 1 in 1,000 Black men can expect to be killed by the police in their lifetime. The death rate for law enforcement officers in 2019 was 11.25 out of every 100,000, which places it outside of the top 10 most dangerous jobs in America. And 21% of law enforcement officer deaths were due to accidental motor vehicle deaths. I'm not trying to downplay how dangerous being a cop is. Sometimes it is dangerous to be a cop, but just it is a fact that it is not in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in America.
Yeah, one of my cousins is a trucker, and like he's statistically a lot more likely to die on the job. My brother-in-law is a firefighter.
I didn't know
Also,
that.
yeah,
Oh, cool. Nice, nice.
yeah.
Also, the murder rate for police officers in 2019 was 6 in every 100,000. The murder rate for general citizens in 2019 was 5 in 100,000. So you're just at a slightly higher chance of getting murdered. So the death rate earlier, that was just a death rate. This is the murder rate. Black Americans are 2.5 times as likely as white Americans to be killed by police. Minneapolis police specifically use force against black people at 7 times the rate of white people. Some of the occupations, actually, Ben, can you put this back when I was talking about this? I don't know why I didn't do that before. Or like back when I was talking about dangerous occupations. So roofers, fishers, electrical workers, and yes, truck drivers are some of the occupations with a higher death rate than policing. Only 35 police officers have been convicted of murdering civilians since 2005, even though roughly 1,000 Americans are shot and killed by law enforcement each year. So I'm going to say that again. That's 35 police officers that have been convicted, even though about 1,000 Americans are shot every year. So 35 since 2005. It's been 15 years. They've convicted 35, even though there's 1,000 per year. So that's like 15,000, 35 people out of about 15,000. Bananas,
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is 98.7% of police officers who murder Americans are never charged or convicted of a crime. And that the 10 largest police departments in the United States spend a combined $10 billion in police misconduct settlements. That's just settling out of shit that their officers have done wrong.
Also, that doesn't come out of like police budgets or police pensions or anything like that.
Where does it come
out
from?
Of taxpayer dollars.
That's right. So you and me are paying for the corrupt cops to do stuff and get away with it.
And like that's billion with a B. Like that is a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that like, and that's again, that doesn't even come out of police budgets, which are already huge. I mean, the NYPD, $6 billion a year, billion with a B. That is more than public education and public health, and I think some other like social service programs in New York combined.
Yeah,
That's
it's a really
insanity.
disproportionate amount for sure. All right, so that is there. Now you have a layout of some factual information, some data about police and death rates, murder rates. So we're going to get into our personal experiences with the police and what we've kind of taken away from it. My only real experience is with something called Bloomington 101, which is a class that Morgan and I both took, but we took it at different times, which is just for 10 weeks, you get to visit a different department of your local government every week. So you go to like economic development, public works, parks and rec. It was really interesting, and you got to go. My personal favorite was the fire department or maybe the zoo. But the police department was kind of cool. Like, I don't know. We toured the police department, met some cops. Like, what do you remember?
Yeah, it was interesting. So one of the things that I remember was they talked about their use of force trainings that they had, and it was very interesting. long story short, though, they were in that department, and I believe in the state of Illinois, but I could be wrong, were encouraged, like, through their policies to use their guns over their tasers. So
Why?
basically, like whenever they fired their taser, there was more paperwork than if they fired their gun. They had more firearms training than they had taser training. Basically, like, fewer questions would be asked of that officer and their actions in the moment if they used their gun rather than their taser.
That is crazy, and it like
Yeah, I was
incentivizes the
so
weirdest
shocked.
stuff.
And the officer that was explaining this clearly also was like, this isn't great. Like, he
That's
was, he was not supportive of this. Like, the
yeah.
officer was like, yeah, this isn't great. This is something that, like, we don't like. Like,
So that's kind of like that happened to me twice on my ride along. So one of the things I was really interested in, and one of the reasons I wanted to go on that ride along, is because they just started using body cameras there. It was January 2017, and I noticed that when I toured, there was only one black officer in the entire department, and he was the chief. So I thought that was interesting. I don't really have any further insights about that, but it's true.
I think there might have been one black officer and one, like, Latino, he was a man, officer when I was there. Yeah, it wasn't, like, super diverse.
Yeah.
I mean, and they talked about that a little bit there because people asked. They also talked about community policing. A couple people in that class with me who were, like, very passionate about that, and so that was really interesting too. And and it really was for me eye-opening between, like, the policies versus, like, the officers and what they wanted to do. We did, like, a handcuffing lesson where they showed us, like, let us put handcuffs on each other and talk to us about, like, the procedures for that and everything. And like, they, like, were like you're not gonna find these comfortable. They are not comfortable. And when people have to, like, sit in the car with their hands handcuffed behind their back, like, that's really uncomfortable and stuff. And you can kind of see, like, what that's like or whatever. And somebody's like, well, why don't you just let them do the cuffs in front then? And they said, well, if somebody is old or pregnant or has said that they've had a recent surgery or something, we can do that. But in general, we can't, because it's easier for them to get out of. And if they get out, we get in a lot of trouble. Which I'm like, wait a second. So, like, you guys get in a ton of trouble for something that's just like a small, like, slip or mistake or whatever. Like literally, like, they were like we could get, like, fined, or we could get suspended without pay for somebody, like, escaping their cuffs or whatever. Which to me was shocking because, I mean, some departments in this country don't even automatically suspend people without pay when they kill someone. But if someone slips their cuffs or gets away, then they are punished. And, like, this is not me excusing, but it's also like, okay, well, maybe fewer people would be shot in the back while they're running away if police departments didn't have policies that punished officers for, like, failing to detain a person who ran away. Like, not excusing, you should not shoot people in the back, but it's also like, maybe we also shouldn't punish officers who don't do that, and that results in a person running away.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, what?
Yeah. This is kind of sort of unrelated, but I don't know if we've talked about this much, and I think it's probably pretty well known, but a lot of the really effective Ferguson protesters were murdered in, like, really suspicious circumstances in the years following. Like, found burned to death in a car, or, like, shot, and I don't know, just a lot of really sketchy stuff. Maybe we'll do an episode about it eventually.
I bet there's a whole podcast on it.
There is? Oh.
There should be.
For a long time, I was like, man, there must be some, like, really high up conspiracy about this. And, like, now it's just like, oh, it's just racists. Like, it's just white supremacy. They just don't like that they're speaking out, which is somehow like sadder than if there was just like some kind of a conspiracy. I don't know.
Well, I think that that really speaks a lot to a lot of people with their conspiracies and things that are just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you realize that you sound completely paranoid and insane because, like, it's so sad and hard
Right.
to believe, like,
Yeah.
the ease of people's actions that are so hateful,
Mm-hmm.
and just, you know, the actual like inequalities and everything in life, like, that is reality. I think that that's so hard to just believe and accept, that it's actually easier for people because they can kind of like disassociate from it when
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's actually the deep state, or
I
it's
think a lot of
actually like some
people did it.
hardcore government thing.
Yeah, with like Sandy Hook and stuff. I think
Yeah.
they were kind of like, you know what? I can't process somebody murdering kindergartners or first graders or whatever. So,
Yep. Yeah. The
not
truth
to
is
excuse
so.
Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a piece of shit,
Oh
but
my god. Yeah. Yeah,
um,
like, but that's how they take off, is
yeah.
because people are like, wow, it's so much easier for me to believe this far
Yes.
away, uncontrollable thing is the problem rather than something that was controllable. I mean, we see that with COVID-19 too, right? Like, when
Yeah.
we're like, yeah, pandemic and all of this, like, conspiracy-ness, that makes you feel like, well, I couldn't have done anything anyway, instead of like the reality that so many of these deaths could have been prevented if we would have responded even a few weeks sooner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also at that Bloomington 101 training did this. I talked about it a little bit last week. This like simulation thing that they had, which was like these big screens, and you wore a police belt with all the gear that you
Hmm.
could use, and it was like electronic. So like, if you did fire the gun, they had these cameras that would like track where the bullet went and whether or not you hit someone or something that was on the screen, and it was like interactive. It was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
At the time anyway that I went through this, these types of simulations were really rare. I don't know about now, but considered a very useful tool for practice, which I could definitely see how,
Mm-hmm.
which is good, but also like something that I've been thinking that we need to consider with trainings like this is more than 90% of arrests are for nonviolent offenses.
Right.
So why is so much of the training dedicated to preparing officers for situations to turn violent?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that piece, so many people probably read, I think it was on Medium. It was written by a former police officer who, like, the author titled it Confessions of a Former Bastard. And
I've
he
read it
talked
twice.
about, yeah, he talked about like how all of the training videos that they watched had violence.
Yeah.
Like, all of them showed usually a black person shooting the officers during a traffic stop and those kinds of things. Like,
Yeah.
all of their training, even though they're acting 90% of the time as basically social workers with guns,
Mm-hmm.
most of the training surrounded these violent incidences.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when your training is for a simple domestic dispute between two neighbors to turn violent and become a stabbing, that's the kind of thing you're going to come to expect.
Yeah.
Like, if your training's really heavy in one area, that's the area that dominates your brain.
When you're given a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yes.
I actually have a really good clip of that type of training. It's with a guy named with Dave Grossman. He considers himself an expert in killology, and he trains all over the United States, including, I'm going to get this right. I think he trained the officer who killed Philando Castile, or I'm going to get it wrong. But anyway, yeah. And he trained one of the officers that killed an unarmed black man, and like, people are like, should this guy have any kind of liability? But here, we'll play that right now so you can see like the kind of rhetoric that he uses. Oh yeah, it is Philando Castile. Yes, God, I'm so smart. It's a good clip.
Yeah.
You'll like it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like a crazy dude being like, you have to know that you can step in there and take a human life.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
and
like,
even,
stop
like, when
talking like that.
Yeah, when I was dating the police officer, which I'll talk about more later, but like, so much of the training that they had was firearms
Mm-hmm.
training and was like violent, like situations of violence, like violent arrests and um, which don't get me wrong. Okay, they need a certain amount of that training because yeah, like there was that 5% of instances which are violent or 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like a lot of his calls were not that,
Right.
and they rarely had trainings for things like that. And that was something that like him and other officers as well identified as like a huge gap
Mm-hmm.
in their knowledge of like, I am supposed to be able to talk somebody down from suicide. I don't know how to do that. I was
Yeah.
not trained that. Like we spent a lot of time shooting guns, but I don't know how to talk somebody out of blowing their own like brains out.
Yeah.
Like,
Do
yeah,
some kind
and
of preventative something.
yeah, and like I feel like for us as former athletes, like that's such a good example of this,
I was
right?
thinking about
Like
that too. Like
if
you
the
would never
athlete,
train.
yeah,
Yes, it's
you
so
wouldn't like you wouldn't if we're just training like one skill or one technique
Mm-hmm.
or like one specific muscle group
You're gonna
or only,
lose.
like preparing like one particular game time scenario. You will not do a good job.
Right.
You will
Yeah.
fail. Like you will fail your
If you
team.
if
The
you try to
results will
like
be
set
bad.
up your season that way, yeah,
Yeah,
like yeah, you would.
yeah, or like think of like those lame sexual harassment videos in like the 80s and 90s when they first started having sexual harassment as a topic in the workplace.
Hmm.
And like it was all just like this super like overt like boob grabbing. And so
Oh.
we all got into this headspace that like, well, sexual harassment means someone grabs your tits or spanks your ass when you bend over. And like we never talked about the ways
Yeah.
it usually manifests itself.
And then you're like, wow, I'm so lucky that nobody's come up to me and grabbed these big natties. Like,
yeah, exactly. Same with
I'm
racism,
lucky.
right? Like we
Yeah.
learn about
Yeah.
racism through the lens of like white hoods and burning crosses, and
It's like that's
we
not
don't talk about microaggressions and redlining. And yeah,
and
like
rape. Sorry, that's
mhm,
separate, but like yeah, people think that rape is like something that happens to strangers in alleys, and it's not. It's something that happens between people that know each other.
yeah, and so yeah, it's just kind of like that too. Like you can't expect somebody to be prepared for comprehensive responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
or skills if you're not training those.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Want to go back to recording?
Yes.
I mean, that whole thing was recorded. Do you want it to be in the recording?
You know what? I liked some of that.
I
I
liked it
thought
too.
it was good. Yeah,
Ben,
we'll leave that in there.
you can decide what was interesting about that. I think the sport part was interesting. I think most of it was interesting. Take out the parts where you think we sound dumb.
Yeah.
Jake.
Oh my gosh, always do that, please. Although then
Actually,
maybe we wouldn't have a podcast. Sorry, Ben.
no, we are incredibly smart. Okay, I'm gonna start talking again.
Okay.
This part is definitely in it. Okay, so
Yes, talk
that
about your ride along.
okay, I want to talk a little bit more about that Dave Grossman clip, and I just like that is just not the attitude that you need going to like check on a guy sleeping in his car in a Wendy's parking lot, like you
Yeah.
said, they're like trained to kill. They're not, or not, you know what I mean. I mean, like they are trained to be ready to be in that mindset and like to not feel bad about it. So yeah, that's just not the attitude you want going into like 90% of those situations. Okay, I will talk about my ride along. I'll talk about like a couple of the specifics, but okay. So the reason that my officer said he didn't like body cameras is he gave me like a specific example. He said that he responded to a call. It was like a domestic dispute, and there was a kid who I think had some learning disabilities who pushed his mom. He was overwhelmed. He was like overstimulated and wanted to get out of the house, and the mom was in the way. So he pushed the mom out of the way. Not like hard really, but like she wasn't like hurt. She didn't want to press charges. But my officer said that he had to press charges because it was on video. So like normally he wouldn't have pressed charges against the kid because like he knew it was just like like a kid who was blowing off steam, and he like but because it was on video, he then had to like press charges against the kid, which I guess I will take
Yeah,
at
or he
face
could
value.
probably be held like responsible for being there and not doing his job.
Yeah. And I did not, I was much more like
Shopping.
passive back then. Um, I honestly think I dated like one too many men who did not respect me. And then something like some switch flipped and now I take no shit at all. Um, so I did not, but since I was pretty passive back then, so I didn't say like, I mean, the alternative is like seeing cops murder unarmed black men, and it's just like, are the pros better than like, I don't know. He didn't bring up any of the like pros. He just brought up that one thing that he didn't like. Um, so yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of said like, huh, I never thought of that, and then like moved on. The other thing that I was struck by, so my ride along was from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. I was sleepy by the end, but there was no like plan. We just did like whatever. We just like drove around. We did nothing most of the night. Um, you could also go on a ride along from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., but that made me so sleepy to think about. So yeah, so it was dark out the whole time we were there. We pulled over a couple bikers like without lights on their bikes and gave them warnings. Didn't give them like actual tickets. So that was like about safety, I guess. Like, but it's not like we gave them a light. Like we just were like, hey, go get one. And then I think like the two most memorable things that we did is we responded to another officer's call. They were doing a field sobriety test, and both of the officers that were responding were new. So they wanted like the officer I was with to come as like backup and just make sure that they were doing everything right and like by the books. And so when we got there, it was just like a 19-year-old white kid who had like pulled over on the side of the street, and he was like a little bit too far from the curb. So I think that's what like originally like they got their attention. And then he like ducked when they drove by, so they stopped to like see.
Oh,
I know.
kiddo.
So they like stopped to see what was going on, and he was smoking weed. And he was like outside his friend's house, and his friend came out and was like yelling at the officers and wanted so badly for them to leave his friend alone. And I felt so bad for him. And like what kind of struck me, like my officer was cool. Like he was nice. He didn't seem to have any kind of temper problems, whatever. But like, again, I only spent 4 hours with him, but he did like, he genuinely seemed like he was like in it for the right reasons. So he was doing a pretty good job of de-escalating the situation, but like a couple times I had to step in and like talk to that guy and be like, I know like you're trying to be a good friend, like I get what you're trying to do, but you're making it worse, and like you're gonna so and like when we were leaving, my officer was like, thanks, like you were pretty good at that. And I was like, yeah, you guys probably should have been better at that. Sorry, no, I did not say that. Again, passive. But yeah, so, and then as we were leaving, he basically told me that like he wouldn't have done that if it was his call. And it's just like, man, this seems so arbitrary. Like,
Yeah,
again, like
yeah, it
who,
really is. It just
yes.
like depending on the officer's mood
Mm-hmm.
and who that officer is
Mm-hmm.
depends on so much.
And their
Yeah.
prejudices. Yeah.
Yeah, their own prejudices.
Actually, you
Yeah.
know what? Now that you mention it, I wish I could remember the name of it. When we were responding to that call, he called that neighborhood like a pretty derogatory. It was on the west side, so it like was the like more socioeconomically disadvantaged part of the neighborhood. But they had like as a department, they had some like really derogatory name. I think they called it something like Country Club Drive, but like in a sarcastic way. It was just like, cool guys. So yeah, so there was that. And then the other one that kind of stuck with me, again, like I think his heart was in the right place. Like we stopped at a home where there had been a domestic dispute a few days earlier that he had responded to. And it was something about like a daughter was living there with her mom. She had just had a baby. I think she was still in high school, and like the father of the baby had moved in with them, but the mom wanted him to leave, and he wasn't leaving. So my officer like came back with, he had like looked into it and brought like an eviction notice with, like, it was nice, you know, he like was trying to do his best. But again, like, we showed up at like 9 p.m., no announcement, like a police officer knocking on your door at 9 p.m. on a like school night. There were other kids there too, and then like just a police officer who's was probably like 6'4", like big, in a bulletproof vest, like, and a stranger, me, in a bulletproof vest, walk into your house, and we're just like chilling, talking. Like, that would stress me out so much. So just like, no thank you to a police officer coming over unannounced. So like, he was trying to make sure that they were connected to the resources that they need. I just like profoundly disagree that that's the way to go about doing that. So again, like, yeah, it just better time better spent elsewhere. But I have to say, we really did stop at a gas station, and they really did give us free coffee. I picked hot chocolate, but like, they, for real, I was like, are you really not going to make me pay for this? And they were like, nope. I was like, wow. Perks of being a police officer. So yeah, those were not, I don't know, not super exciting, but like, overall just kind of left like unimpressed. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I expected. I definitely didn't see anything that was like overly alarming, but I was, yeah, not overly impressed.
Yeah, I mean, in my own experience, having lived with a cop, yeah, like most nights and days were real chill, pretty boring. Hard for him to stay awake for, those kinds of things. And then the occasional really like exciting thing happened, whether it was a negative exciting thing or a positive exciting thing. And yeah, sometimes there was for sure a lot of PTSD type situation wrapped up in all of that. And it's like, I feel like we can be like sympathetic towards that, but still like demand change in,
for sure,
you know, the whole system, which is, yeah, something I'm kind of going to talk about a little bit too.
Yeah.
After like dating and living with, and for a long time being really sure that I would marry this guy who was a cop in my early 20s. I think it was a good experience in a lot of ways, and like learning, like I really had no idea what it actually looked like to be a police officer. So that was great. And, you know, like, obviously we didn't work out. He is my ex, but like, it wasn't because he was a cop or even because he was a bad dude. Like, this guy's actually a good human. I loved his family. Like, when we say all cops are bastards, like, we don't mean every person who is an officer is just like a useless pile of meat and bones. Like, some of them are definitely useless piles of meat and bones, but I mean, the humans putting the badge on or whatever aren't necessarily what we're saying is the problem. Now, some of them are, like the 40% that beat their wives, but like, the thing is, like,
hold on, people repeat that stat all the time. I want to disclaimer, I looked it up because this is what I do, like, just so you know that this is what I,
that high.
It's from, it's just that those two studies are from 1991 and 1992. So like, there have been studies since then that do show that police absolutely do engage in domestic violence at higher rates than the general population, but there haven't been any studies that have been recreated that show it as high as 40%. So I just want to put it out there.
That's good.
You're right. Like, those studies did suggest that 40%, like, self-reported police officers beat their wives, but those were from when we were born. And so just take that with a grain of salt, but it's not absurd or wrong to say that police engage in domestic violence at higher rates than the regular population. So I just wanted to interject. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but like the people who are good people, like, you know, your Officer Nick and my ex, and one of my friends from college who's a police officer now, like, they are like putting on the uniform and then working right alongside the ones who are racist and the
Right.
ones who beat their wives.
Right.
And working in a total shit system that perpetuates racism among all of the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so, you know, when we talk about World War II, like, we know that there were some German soldiers who only went along with the whole become a Nazi thing because they knew that that was the only way to protect their families and keep their children and themselves from getting killed. And like, they absolutely did not inherently believe in what Hitler had them fighting for, but it doesn't mean that they weren't still Nazis. You know, so that's like when we say all cops are bastards, like, maybe we only mean when they actually put that uniform on, and maybe not the person itself, but the institution itself is just full of so much bullshit.
I think the next couple episodes will be more about like the systemic aspects of it. The two that I have in mind are about the war on drugs and the NYPD tapes and Adrian Schoolcraft. I would really like to do an episode on both of those, and that would really like make the point that you are talking about right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that kind of brings me to like my other perspective while dating an officer was like, wow, police really should not be doing a lot of this stuff. Like, most of the things that he was responding to were minor domestic disputes, arguments between neighbors, or welfare checks, or just other things that definitely like could be handled by someone else. Like, I think there were like 3 whole times that we were together and like living together that it was actually necessary that there was like a person or multiple people with a gun present. And of course, obviously, it was very good that he was there responding to that call at that time. As the officer that he was. But we need expansion of first responders way beyond law enforcement, because that's what police officers are. They're law enforcement. That should be it. Like, that should be it. Like, so once my ex was first on the scene to an apartment fire, because it was going to actually take quite a while for the volunteer fire department to get there, because that was the resources we were working with in that town.
Where did you live?
It was like a town of like 5,000, 6,000 people here in Iowa.
Was it like by the border? Like,
no, not really. Not super close. Just outside like the Quad Cities area.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Ben, you can take that part out. But how old? Where were you working? Boys and or?
I was working at Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Big Brothers. Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, okay. So, there was a time that my ex was first on the scene to an apartment fire, and because it was going to take a while for the volunteer fire department to get there, because that was what we were working with in the town, which, you know, just volunteer service. My ex was on duty, and he was the first one at the scene. So he literally ran into a burning building in nothing but his Kevlar vest and nylon police officer uniform, to drag someone out of the burning apartment building, because he was the first one on scene and somebody had to get in, and that was that. And like, the guy ended up dying anyway. And like, my point in the story is that, like, yes, obviously, like, there are selfless people who are police officers. I mean, I don't think anybody runs into a burning building because they actually became an officer so they could shoot people. But like, they go into it for the right reasons. But that means the best way to support those individuals too is to fund something else.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about that so much. Yeah, because so like, I hear police officers talk all the time about how they don't have the like, they're the catch-all because we've cut a lot of other social services, including like mental health, but also like animal control, you know, like they become the dog catchers. Like they become.
He had to catch stray animals a lot. Like that shouldn't be a police officer's job.
But so like, to me, defund the police is more like restructure it so that you still have the people to respond to the violent situations that need to be responded to that way, but that there's funding so that people who are trained to catch dogs go catch dogs. Yeah, just stuff like that they it's like an answer to what they're saying. They're saying we can't possibly handle all of this stuff, and defund the police is like, all right, let's take some of that off your plate and put the
Yeah,
resources elsewhere.
exactly. Like he watched two people die by suicide right in front of him
Mm,
because police officers were the only ones to deal with a suicidal person or another individual having a mental health crisis.
mm-hmm.
Like that shouldn't be a police officer's job. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, great that they're there to do it, but also not because that shouldn't be their job.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be. And like, I mean, part of me is really biased when I say that, but like, my brother has a serious mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, serious mental illness says. But like, if he's having a, for example, schizophrenic episode someday, the person that shows up is going to be a cop with a gun, and that scares the shit out of me.
Yes.
Like, that shouldn't be a cop's job. I mean, I'm glad that there are some officers trained in mental health first aid who would be able to recognize and do the right thing, but there are a lot of officers who would also tackle my brother to the ground and kneel on his neck for minutes while four others stand on, or shoot him, or, and like that like terrifies me, and I just like, it makes me so scared. And yeah, like, again, that just should be a cop's job. Like like my ex always wanted to be a school resource officer, so he wanted to be the cop in the local high school. Like that's what he really thought was kind of like his ultimate career goal in that department.
I read a 4-page paper today about how bad school resource officers are.
Like he thought, and because he had this idea, he hadn't been an officer very long. We were dating. We were both, I was in my early 20s. He was in his mid 20s. But like, he thought it'd be fun to be like the cool cop who made kids feel safe and got to talk to the kids who were being bullied and stuff. Like, he thought that would be cool to be like the cop who's shooting hoops with kids and all of that. Like, but like, I was like, well, I mean, that shouldn't be your job either. Like, that should be the guidance counselor who gets to be cool and talk to the kids and play games with them when they're being bullied. Like, we shouldn't have to pay cops to do that. You know, like, but we don't have guidance counselors because in America we cut all the funding to public education. And yes, so it's just like, there's just so many examples of things that just shouldn't be in the job description for police officers. And like, it's not fair to the officers, and it's not fair to the public, because it actually is a danger to public health and safety.
Right.
To have law enforcement officers doubling as social workers and counselors and mental health professionals and EMTs and all of these other things.
Yeah, because it's basically somebody who's a beginner at all of those things, like trying their hand at it.
Right. Again, I'm a track and field nerd. Even in a pinch, you are not going to put your decathlete in the 5K. You're just not.
Of course.
They're trained to be like pretty good at all of the events and not really good at an event. I mean, some of them are because they specialized in a previous life, but like, that's the thing, right? It's like, you don't want just like one entity who's like average in a bunch of things they're training for. Like, when you can actually have specified, and you know, and look at other countries too, and like, look at what they do, and look at their rates of police killings in the US. Like, an average of a little over 1,000 people a year are killed by police. In Japan and in the UK and in like Switzerland, it's like an average of like between 0 and 2 people a year.
I have it like screenshot somewhere on my phone because I remember seeing that and being like, oh my God, we're so bad at this.
It is a shocking statistic.
And like, I hate seeing stuff like that, because then it's just like, hey, let's just do, what if we just try doing what they're doing? And it's like, oh, we can't, because we have to have like the prison industrial we have the prison industrial complex, and like a lot of people rely on prison labor, and it's just a new form of slavery.
Yeah, go
and
watch
we can't
13.
afford. Yeah, watch 13th. Watch 13th, and also watch Just Mercy is on YouTube and Amazon Prime for free during the month of June. It's called Just Mercy. If you need any extra reasons to watch it, it stars Michael B. Jordan.
And Jamie Foxx.
And Jamie Foxx. Is Jamie Foxx cool?
I think so. I
Who's
think
the
Jamie
guy?
Foxx is cool. Terry Crews is the one that I think we were like, I think you're canceled now. Like we liked
Wait,
Terry
what?
Crews a lot, and then he got weirdly weird.
Hold on. I think Jamie Foxx might be canceled too. Hold on.
Damn it.
Maybe not.
I thought Jamie Foxx was still kind of wholesome, but I could definitely be wrong. Yeah, Terry Crews is has been saying some real weird stuff, but
Really? Well, the only thing I remember about him. Okay, Jamie Foxx is, I think, fine.
good because I really like him.
Okay. So, okay, Jamie Foxx, Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, Just Mercy is for free for the month of June, and I do recommend everybody watching it. It's about death row lawyers. It's based on a true story, and it's really good. Maybe I'll watch it again. Sorry, why did I bring that up? Oh, you watch 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, that's why we can't do it the way that they do it in other countries, because we
Rely on the prison industrial complex.
We sure do, because we have a ruling class and an underclass.
Yep. I mean, the place that I work, whenever we get like new office furniture, it's assembled by prisoners.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pervasive.
Yep.
Yeah. What else did we want to mention?
I don't know. I guess just the only other like thing. Okay, not the only. Like I could talk so much about the relationship that I had, but like I asked my police officer ex-boyfriend. I mean, when we were still dating, I was like, "Is the system as racist as they say?" And he's like, "Yes." Like, yes, it is, and we know it. Like, some of the officers like it that way. They want the system to be racist. That's what attracted them in the first place.
Right.
And like, because my ex said, like, yeah, we are told to target crappy vehicles, or people who look like they should be driving a really nice vehicle. Yeah. And also to spend more time patrolling poor neighborhoods, or like just low income neighborhoods, which means targeting young people and mostly black people and people of color. Like that's what that means. Like they're not told target the black people and drive through the black neighborhoods. They're told to target crappy vehicles, which means young people and people of color.
Yeah.
Like because low income people are statistically more likely to be people of color, not like because people of color drive garbage cars. Want to clarify that. Yeah, and like they're also instructed to like pull somebody over for a tail light, or not using their blinker or something, and then turn it into a search for drugs.
Yeah.
Like and like don't even get me started on the actual justice system, totally apart from law enforcement itself, because that's an episode for another day.
Yeah. But police officers are how people enter the criminal justice system.
Yes.
And like you said, a lot of the times they pull them over. When we talk about Adrian Schoolcraft and the NYPD tapes, they pulled people over, like, the way that they justified it is they were seeing if they had a warrant. And if they had a warrant, then they would, like, take them in until, well, I'll get into it more, but until, like, he realized that their warrants were for also for bullshit stuff. So it was just, like, bullshit on top of bullshit on top of bullshit, and unfairly targeting black people, mostly.
More bullshit. Sorry.
More
Mama.
bullshit.
Should we get to our Instagram questions?
Wait, I want to know one thing. Did your ex ever talk about his police union at all?
Ooh, okay. So, funny story about how police unions should not be considered unions.
Yes.
So my ex is in the military, and at the end of his last shift, before he left for a deployment, he got fired. Yeah. So he ended his last shift, came in, was like, all right, see y'all in 6 months. They're like, hey, step into our office. By the way, you're fired. They said that like he broke protocol regarding the seizure of some kid's weed. But like for one, there wasn't proof that ever happened. And also for two, like that's not generally a fireable offense. Like they said, like he didn't like label it and then bag it properly, or he like took it without, I don't know, something really like stupid. Right. And so it's not usually fireable offense, even if he did like fuck it up. And also, like, he was like, I didn't mess that up.
Hmm.
Like, the kid never filed complaint or anything either. Like, although the chief of police, who was the one that fired him, actually did have a ton of complaints filed regarding his conduct, particularly towards women and minorities. And that those complaints that came in were not only like civilians, there were other officers
Hmm.
too, some of whom had left that department because working under him and with him, the chief, not my ex, was so awful because he was such a terrible person.
Yeah.
So yeah, fun fact. Yeah, and so and like for and second off, like, I mean, firing someone after their last shift before they're about to leave for like 6 months on deployment, like, you could at least try to make it look legitimate,
Mm-hmm.
like, but you wait until after their final shift and then you're like, oh, by the way, bye. Yeah, so Max was like, dude, like, it's illegal to fire someone for getting deployed with the military. Like, you are not allowed to do that, and you have no reasonable cause because this bullshit thing that you made up isn't even an actual thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the police union did about that?
Did
Nothing.
they step up and help
No,
and do the
they
right
did nothing
thing?
because, like, police unions are nothing like labor unions. They're total shit. Like,
They're much more like the NRA.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that of them as the NRA.
yeah. So the union actually was protected this shitty chief that had all the complaints from women and minorities against
Mm-hmm.
him. They protected the chief from being held accountable for his actions. So it meant that all his complaints filed amounted to nothing, and it meant that, like, he personally wouldn't be liable for firing an officer due to his military service. Um, but the union did not do anything to help the officer who was fired illegally get his job back. So, like, police unions should not be considered unions. Like,
They're
they
not.
should be
They have
considered
no
lobbying
interest.
groups.
Yeah, they're lobbying group. Yeah, they're well. They have no interest in fair wages or vacate like adequate sick time or anything like that. They exist solely to keep police officers from being held accountable.
Yep.
So on this podcast, we are pro union but anti police union
Yep.
because
Police unions do not count when we say
right.
we're pro union.
That we got to hold that nuance in our brains, and I think we can do it.
Yes.
Now, would you like to get to our Instagram questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Kate asks, do the good cops you know stay in the system to try to change it? I looked up a couple examples, not including Adrian's Schoolhouse. And Morgan, like, you can answer this too, but my answer is I found 8 examples of cops facing retribution for trying to expose corruption within their own departments. If you want to, you can look up more about each of these, but Kurt Stanbury was fired for exposing corruption. Ray Lewis was arrested for protesting corruption. Shanna Lopez was fired for reporting a cop who was a sexual predator. Carol Horn was fired for stopping an incident of police abuse. Andrea Heath was driven to suicide for being a whistleblower. Joe Crystal was fired for turning in fellow cops for brutality. Regina Tasca was fired for stopping an incident of police abuse. And Laura Shook was fired for exposing corruption. So there you go. You have at least 8 good cops that were all faced retaliation or negative consequences of trying to expose the corruption within their own departments. And soon we'll have a whole episode about Adrian Schoolcraft, who is probably the prime example of good cops trying to change the system and being fired for doing so. He didn't even just get fired, he got held against his will in a mental facility by police. Cool.
Damn.
Yeah. What about you? Do you know any good cops who try and stay in the system to try and change it?
When I think of the police officers I know, I can think of a few who would at least say something if they witnessed like brutality happening right in front of them. Right, I can think of a couple who, if they saw a coworker kneeling on someone's neck, would be like, um, dude, like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to stop. Um, but not all of them. Like, I got to know a lot of cops while I was dating one, and there were a couple that I could definitely think of that would be like, this isn't okay. Like,
Yeah.
this has to stop. And then like, I would say about half of them wouldn't. They would just freeze in that moment.
Yeah.
And again, probably in part because nothing in their training prepares them to actually handle that, and it absolutely should, knowing what we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the officers I know change departments when they witness corruption, like with this hope that if they just keep hopping around departments, eventually maybe they'll find one that doesn't suck.
But that still means there's a bunch of departments out there that are really fucked up.
Yeah. And I think it's also a system where so many of the people who actually do get to the top really are not the great ones. Not
Yes.
saying all, but like a lot of the ones that are the most like the closest to being sociopaths
Yes.
are also the ones that end up in the positions of the most power, because
I
they
used to
can
talk.
sit there and stand it.
Yes.
It doesn't bother them.
I used to talk to my counselor about that all the time, about our old boss or boss's boss, and how like a lot of times people with those kind of personality traits just get passed on because people want to get rid of them. Like they're given like positive references so that they get the fuck out of there. But yeah, he talked a lot about how that people like that are drawn to positions of power. I think like CEOs have like an astronomically higher chance of being sociopaths.
I think it's all like that with policing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
An ambitious police officer is not good. Like, ambitious is not a word that you want to apply to someone who's an officer. You know?
Why? Because they'll like scrappy, try to get to the top.
Yeah.
Like bad ways?
Yeah. Like, I think that there's just too much there. I don't know. Like, just when I think of the people, like, generally I think ambition is such a positive trait. But then when I think of it in reference to a lot of officers,
yeah,
I think like, to me,
maybe
that
as long
means
as
like trying to like hit a quota.
Yeah, maybe as long as they also have ambition with integrity is okay. But ambition without integrity is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, I like that, because I'm not. Yeah, ambition is generally a good thing, but then I think of the like. I just am thinking of one particular person, which again, like, this is all anecdotal, so don't think we're generalizing. But I'm thinking of like one particular person who like rose through the ranks like extremely fast. Everyone hates this person. Like, and I'm like, should we talk about that?
Yeah.
Like, also, I worked as a server at a diner, and this person's ex-wife would come in all the time, and whoo, boy, did she have some stories. I was like, boy, everyone rightfully hates this person.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, I was
like my nightmare.
Woman. Holy crap! So yeah, I guess maybe I shouldn't be projecting, but
yeah. All right, Julie asks, any occurrences during the ride-along that were positive interactions with the community? I mean, it certainly could have been worse. I guess, like I said, his heart was in the right place, but I think both instances, like both of the like major instances, we did some other stuff, like we were going to pull people over, but we actually never found anybody to pull over. But he was looking to pull over people who didn't have lights on their license plates.
Oh, that is one of their favorites.
It just seems so arbitrary to me.
Yeah,
but
a friend of mine who's black got pulled over for that, and then like questioned for like 20 minutes about where she was and where she was going and where she lived and why she was out so late and all of that. And yeah, it was just very clearly the officer like hoping it would turn into like a DUI or
right.
a stolen vehicle or something. thing.
Right. Like an assumption that they're guilty for something, so you might as well
Yeah.
investigate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, like, for me, occurrences, obviously not during the ride along, but that were positive interactions with the community. I think that we were living in a pretty small town when I was living with a police officer. And I think that made a big difference. I
Yeah.
think the interactions between the police and the community were more positive in general. And I think that was just kind of that whole like small town Iowa. Not saying Iowa doesn't have racism, because it sure does. But you know, I think that like that whole like small townness made it so much easier for like the cops to still be very real people
Yeah.
in town. Um, and everything. Not that like some of those like community policing feel goodsy things actually show like evidence based, you know, have any evidence based merit.
They're also just
But
like, they seem just kind of like inherently racist to me. Like, hey, hang out with my black kid so you see him as a human and don't want to shoot him. Like, isn't that kind of what community policing is?
yeah, like some of, yeah, it's like, hey, hang out
It
with
just
them and they're
makes me
kids,
feel
but then it's like,
yucky.
yeah, then it's like, I feel like so much of it is actually rooted in like maybe we'll make the kids like the cops so much that they don't want to do crimes when they're grown. It's like that.
Go fuck yourself.
That's not it.
Yeah.
I liked Clark's question on our Instagram. Were
Yeah.
you scared? LOL.
I was not scared at any point, really. I did have to wear a bulletproof vest. I think that was probably when I was the most scared. I was like, wait, what? Why? Like, why are you putting this on me? But no, I wasn't ever really scared. I was at one point a little bit. What?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was at one point a little bit nervous for the guy who was trying to get his friend off, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Just because he was real loud and combative, and I was scared for him. But all of the 3 police officers that were on the scene could not give a fuck about that guy, basically. Like, they were not interested in him. He was like background noise to them, which is I'm glad they handled it that way, kind of like they were just like doing their thing, and
they didn't like cuff him just because he was
yeah,
feelings.
They didn't let it like escalate or like take it personally, or so no, I wasn't no, Clark, I was not scared.
I will say, like, when the person that I loved was a police officer, like, I was scared sometimes. The Ferguson riots were happening during our relationship. And so, you know, there was a lot at that time that, you know, for me, I was like, oh my God, there's so much hatred towards police right now. It makes me really scared, like, for him. But then on the other side, like, him and I did have conversations all the time about the racism surrounding it. Like, it wasn't all just like, oh my God, thin blue line. It was also like, yeah, but there's also some really fucked up stuff going on. But yeah, like there were still times that I was scared, or like there was like a hostage situation at one point or something, and I was like, whoa, this is terrifying. But like in general, it was also like my biggest fear was a car accident. You know, like logically that was like always like, oh, I love this person that's a cop, but they're a lot more likely to die in a car accident than they are to be like violently assaulted or anything. Like it's sad when anyone is violently assaulted. My brother-in-law, who's a firefighter, is at risk of that same thing sometimes. Like EMTs are out there and they get attacked too. One of my best friends is a nurse. I was just gonna say, nurses get attacked all the time. They don't get tasers.
They don't murder their patients. They figure it out.
My aunts, 2 aunts who've worked with in like mental health facilities or worked with people with mental illness who like are at risk, like you know, of potentially being a victim of violence or have been, and like that stuff is scary. Like that's just the reality of the world. And I mean, I'm a girl and I run outside sometimes in the dark, always by myself. Like it's just like fear is just like natural. It's fine. We're scared all the time, always. I'm a lot more scared for like black kid with Skittles in his pocket.
Can you guys hear the purring?
I can vaguely hear the purring, but I don't know if it's picking up on the recording.
This is my foster kitten who came to curl up on my neck. We don't have a name for him yet, but he's the he's the runt. He's a little black kitten, and he's my favorite. Don't tell the other ones.
He's so sweet. I love black cats.
Mm-hmm. All right, who is our asshole of the week this week?
Well, I nominate every cop who's done something racist or cruel just because they can. They go all the way on the Hitler side. I mean, they're not like as bad as Hitler. I'm not comparing it, but also I am comparing it. So like
Sure.
they're right over there with all the bad people that we didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
And then the officers who stood by and said nothing. They are also on the wrong side of the middle.
Yeah.
Because you gotta speak up. Like, hello, like when we would have big party weekends and stuff at college, they would have these campaigns that were like, if you see something, say something.
Mm-hmm.
So you're expecting a bunch of drunk college kids to speak up when they see violence or sexual assault or shady stuff going on. I'm pretty sure adult professional law enforcement officers also can. So
yeah,
until they speak up, they're also on the bad side. But it's fine because we're all living in the bad place right now.
Yeah. Apparently, or purgatory or something. Yeah. All right, so what are our actions this week?
Okay, so just something that's like kind of a yay and also an action is I'm trying to shop black more. And I'm also trying to shop for more like LGBTQ owned businesses. So like extra yay if it's a black LGBTQ plus owned business.
For sure.
But yeah, so a locally owned black coffee company is now stocked in my usual grocery store, so I like don't have to like order online or anything.
Oh, nice.
I am so happy. Like anybody can get this. It's Black and Bold is the coffee brand. It's so good. I absolutely love it. But now I can actually just like get it at the store, which I probably could have before at other stores, but the one that I shop at the most didn't have it before, and now it does, and I'm so excited. So yeah, everybody shop local, shop small, shop black. Yeah, do it.
Yeah. I'm going to be real honest. I have not been like super active this week. I don't think I've written any letters or postcards. I do want to highlight a progressive of this week, the person that I am choosing to donate to. This week, I want to highlight Beth Doglio. She is a bisexual mother, a climate activist, and a state representative, and she is running for Congress in Olympia, Washington. So she has been endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair, Pramila Jayapal. She's also been endorsed by several actual labor unions, not police unions.
Oh, you don't say.
Mm-hmm. And she has like the real potential to become like the foremost advocate in Congress for Jay Inslee's climate vision, and he has a really, really good climate plan, if you guys remember. She recently embraced the Evergreen Action Plan, which is the movement calling on Democrats to include Inslee's climate agenda in the party platform, which I support. She faces Marilyn Strickland, who's the former president of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, which is the business group that spent millions on behalf of Amazon's corporate interests in local elections. So, kind of like a perfect storm of a really wonderful candidate versus a, corporate interest person. So that primary is August 4th if you live in Washington. Did you see last week we were like 65th in Indonesia? Like the 65th most popular political podcast. I don't think anybody from like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana has ever listened. I don't think there's a single download from those states.
Hey, people who know people in those states.
Yes.
Send them our podcast.
But also, hi to all our Indonesian listeners.
Yeah, hey friends in Indonesia. I only know one person from Indonesia.
I know none. Well, I guess we know. We know some now. They know us.
We do. We have Indonesian friends.
Man, yeah, I don't know. I guess I kind of suck this week. I can't really think of like anything that I've done. I have felt pretty down. I've been reading a book though, so I'm gonna use that as like my self-care.
Oh yeah,
So
that totally counts.
I've been reading a book called We've Got People by Ryan Grimm, and it is really, really good. And it is really doing a good job of explaining the difference between progressive Democrats and corporate Democrats, which I think is something that we struggle with because, like, we don't like all Democrats. We don't like most Republicans, and we definitely also don't like all Democrats. Like, we like particular ones who share our values, basically. And this book just does a really good job of differentiating, I guess, between like progressive and corporate Democrats. And also, I don't know, it's really long, but I'm I think a third of the way through with it, and so I'll keep you updated. But it's a very good book. So it's called We've Got People by Ryan Grimm.
Love it. Yeah, for me, we are having a racial equity committee at work now, and currently in process of deciding what book to read first.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be How to Be Anti-Racist.
That's a good one.
If I had to guess, but don't know for sure yet. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Also, on the note of like things to read for self-care or your own personal education, don't buy John Bolton's book.
Don't do it.
Someone else will read the whole thing and then explain it to us. Like a good, like non-biased, like smart person.
Analysis, yeah.
Yeah, like there'll be an analysis of it. We don't need to personally give money to, I don't even want to say to John Bolton, because he may not really get royalties, because he may have to give those up due to the whole national security thing, because apparently there's national security secrets, which means the Justice Department could demand that he doesn't actually earn the royalties from the book or sue him or whatever.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious.
It kind of would be. But then also, like, Trump also said the book is just full of lies and made up stories. So Is it a national security threat with top secret information, or is it full of lies and stories? Yeah. Like, it can't be both.
So by calling it a national security threat, he's basically admitting it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, big picture about this book, John Bolton absolutely should have testified before Congress during the impeachment hearings when we had, remember like not that long ago when we had a chance to impeach this president, and every single Republican in the Senate except for Mitt fucking Romney voted to acquit him. And that, like, absolutely we should have seen John Bolton as a witness. He said he would not testify before the House. He said he would testify before the Senate, but they didn't call him. And the reason that he didn't testify is so that he could make money off of this book that got released a couple months after impeachment. You know, it's just, there's no integrity there. He is a garbage human, and we are not giving him our money, and we are going to read thoughtful analysis by other people who were paid to read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so that's what's happening. Only other thing that's maybe going to be self-care, spark joy, or just a whole new project that maybe I regret getting involved in someday is apparently now I'm wrangling cats, because I can't not get involved in things. And on my run today, I saw some cats in a place I don't usually see cats, so I went to check it out, and I found a feral cat colony. And now I feel like I need to help them, because I would be an irresponsible, terrible person if I didn't try to TNR them with the help of our local animal rescue.
That means trap, neuter, release, so that these colonies don't keep growing, because as Morgan and I learned recently, a mom cat can have like anywhere between, I mean, she could have like 3 litters a summer. That's not out of this world. Like, or
2 or 3 litters in a year of like 5 cats over just 3 years.
Yeah, like 3 to 9. And then, over their lifetime, like not absurd to see, like for someone to go through like 50 to 150, or just one female cat to have like 50 to 150 kittens.
Yeah. And so, like, at the very least now, I'm going to be going to a kind of sketchy area and that, like, I might be trespassing. I don't know. And bringing cat food. Like, that's like worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I trap like 12 cats.
Yeah, that's good. You signed yourself up for a project.
Like, what did I do? I should have just like anonymously called him and like, hey, there's a colony of feral cats. Somebody's got to help them. Here's where it's at.
Nope.
Oh, but like, I don't even know how I would describe to somebody how to get to this.
It's a Morgan project now.
It is like in a very random location. So
Sad.
yeah, so stay tuned. Also, if anybody wants a feral cat, let me know. I can get you
No.
up.
If anybody is adopting a cat, you're adopting Squeaky from my home. We cannot have her here any longer.
We need to do a hashtag adopt squeaky campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, anything else that you wanted to mention this week?
That's all I've got for now.
Me too. All right. In the meantime, stay sexy.
And defund the police.
Yeah.
Or fuck the police. I don't know.
But not literally.
Yeah, just not literally.
Perfect. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.